Welcome to the Building a Bulletproof Back podcast. As a physio, I'm on a mission to reduce the back pain epidemic. These conversations that you're about to listen to with leading edge teachers and back pain sufferers is my attempt to evolve the mainstream medical approach to treating stubborn back pain. You see, I firmly believe that building a bulletproof back requires mental, physical, and emotional strategy. Let's see what pearls of wisdom we can share with you today. Thanks for listening and thanks for being here. Hey, welcome to another episode of Building Bulletproof Backs, and I'm really happy to have Bart de Vries on the podcast today. And I spotted Bart's product, which is labelled the world's healthiest desk. Recently in an email that came through, I have email alerts set up about back pain products and people doing cool things in the space, and I saw this one and I thought I've got to have a chat. So here we are a week later, and Bart, I will get you, if you can, to introduce yourself to the listeners.
Cool. Thank you. Awesome to be here. My name's Bart. I'm the founder, physiotherapist behind Limber, and as you said, we make the world's healthiest desk, which is not a claim to fame that we've made, by the way, just so people know that we just haven't gone out there and been like, hey, we're the world's healthiest desk. But that's a professor at Berkeley University over in California that gave us that claim, which was really nice. They came over and had a look at our desks in New Zealand and then took one back to the US and have started researching it, and gave it the name of the world's healthiest desk. So that's the first thing I've created, but my mission is to reduce the impacts of back pain. And so as many of your listeners will know, and as you probably know, back pain is the number one cause of disability globally. And at Limber, we're on a mission to figure out how we can halve disability from back pain by 2050. I
love that you said halve. I kind of set myself a goal even higher than that. I want it gone. So you're clearly a practical guy, whereas I'm like reach for the stars, and if we get 75%, I'll be happy. But I love that we share the same mission, and I love that doesn't matter if you share the same mission, you can go about it in different ways, and this is a really cool way you're doing it. So where did you study physio, out of interest? New Zealand?
Otago, yeah.
Okay, cool. And why are you particularly passionate about back pain itself?
I've had back pain since I was about 12 years old.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's what got me into physiotherapy. As I was going through, I guess, growth spurts from age 12, playing a lot of rotational sports like golf, hockey, started getting a lot of thoracolumbar junction issues and had continual pain through there, and ended up going to the physio quite often whilst I was in high school. Played high-level sport all through school, and then ended up playing professional hockey for a few years and then working with athletes as a physio. But one of my best mate's fathers during high school was the owner of the practice, and he was my physio. So I got to spend a fair bit of time with him every week. And so I decided after a couple of years of that, I should maybe just get interested and learn something whilst I'm at the clinic so often. And I fell in love with it. Found it really enjoyable. Both my parents are health practitioners as well, so kind of growing up around that environment. And it was a natural option for me to go into physiotherapy over while I was looking at playing professional golf or being a chef. Those are my three options. I loved cooking, but didn't want to be a professional chef. And I got bored of golf. And so woodwork messed up.
Oh, great! And so woodwork and carpentry and design weren't in the mix.
No, there's no 10-year plan to become a desk maker. I stumbled into it when I came back from Holland. Actually, I was playing professional hockey in Holland, and I came back wanting to get more into the preventative side of healthcare. I ended up stepping back from my clinical hours in physiotherapy for a little bit to pursue that, to understand more about that, and wanted to enter the business world because I saw that as a good mechanism for change. And I started sitting a lot more at a computer, and my back got really sore. And the irony slapped me in the face.
And can I say, the week I saw this email from you was the week I had stepped back clinically more to focus on business development, and I had been spending a lot more time in the office. And I tell you, Bart, I never have back pain, but I was having hip pain, groin pain, the whole 9 yards. And I have a saddle seat. You know, I stand, I drop, I'm moving, I'm conscious. But I think the more you move sometimes, the more you ask your body to sit. It really just does not know how to do it. And, you know, then I saw your email about your product and I was like, oh my God, perfect timing. This is just mint, because it's amazing how even a healthy spine can suffer with sitting at a desk for you know, a few hours. It's quite a big deal. So yeah, keep talking. Why did you, or how did you actually develop the product?
Well, like I looked around. I had a sore back. I was constantly getting my friends and other people in my work environment hitting me up for shoulder rubs and opinions about their neck pain and their back niggles that they were getting as well. And I looked around for something that would allow me to move. And obviously electric sit stands were very common at that point and still are. And standing desks and standing whilst you're working was kind of all of the rave. But from a bit of digging through the research, you could really see that the impacts of that were positive when people moved, but actually the utilization, the actual amount people were moving at an electric sit-stand desk was quite low. So 80% of people who have an electric sit-stand desk don't change height on it. And I was just wondering why that was the case. And then as well, I was looking at it and going, surely there's more to movement than shifting between a chair and standing. Our body has more potential than this. Surely we can bring a little bit more movement into our workday. And that's when we got researching, and I'd come across a number of things over my time around the impacts of, for instance, the sit-rise test, your ability to go from standing to sitting on the floor and back up being a predictor of all-cause mortality. So, you know, how well you can go from standing to sitting on the floor and back up again, and the ease at which you can do that can predict your longevity, essentially. So that's a nice indicator of function and the importance of being able to do those movements. Then started coming across research which was looking at active resting postures and the increased muscle activity of ground-based postures and the impact that has on burning triglycerides and keeping our metabolism happening and helping our body recover after exertion. So combining all of that, just wanted to basically, and looking at our desk environment and going, how do we move more here? What can we change to be able to move more? And when we had the insight that, well, you know, if you remove the chair, suddenly there's a lot of room to move. And what good does the chair actually do? Well, it provides this kind of middle no man's land for our body, which just takes all of the stimulus out of our tissues, and our metabolism shuts off and our brain goes to sleep, and, you know, and we're left in pain. It's, you know, sitting in a chair is the number one aggravator of back pain. Not necessarily a cause of back pain, but the number one aggravator of it. And so that got me thinking. And when we had that insight of, well, what happens if we remove the chair? Suddenly we remove this blocker to movement. We remove this barrier, because essentially it's just a big lump of thing in the way of us standing or sitting on the floor. And if you've only got those two options, you're more likely to do it. And then the other insight that we had was that electric sit-stand desks, they just move too slowly. And when people are in flow states trying to get stuff done, particularly in the design and in the technology world, when they're relying on deep flow states to really get into the complex problems that they're solving, they don't have 20 seconds to change height or break out of that, because it takes them another 20 minutes or 30 minutes to get back into that zone. So they opt for discomfort in their body so that they can maintain the function of their mind. And making it faster and simpler to change height means that people are more likely to do it. So there's the range of motion and then the speed of motion were the two kind of things that we were mainly focused on. And the final piece was just making sure that all your basic fundamentals around monitor height, for example, was all included in the initial offering. So we really wanted to make it a default that whatever desk we made or solution we made, you'd have a variable monitor height, so you could detach your keyboard from your monitor and fix it to whatever torso height or whatever height is right for your torso. And then the fourth was just keeping it beautiful, getting rid of all of the cables and all of the crap that people have on their desks, and
awesome.
making it sustainably.
Making it sustainably, yeah. It looks. It not only looks good, it looks like you've ticked every box that you set out to tick. And I know you're sitting at one right now. So can you do a quick spin and just show us what yours looks like? Now, you've got the bigger version, but there's also, I saw on the website, a mini, which I really love the look of.
Yeah, so there is, we've just launched a mini. I'll get this stuff all.
Now, podcast listeners, probably you're not going to have the visual on this, but remember, this is on YouTube as well, so you can flick on the YouTube recording.
I've got a light attached to my laptop. So here I am down on the floor.
Yep. Are your shoes off, by the way? Are you barefoot as well? Because that'll just tick every box in my mind.
I'm on my sock.
Because as you were talking about the chair, being a big handbrake to spinal movement, and I couldn't help but think, like the shoe, the average rigid shoe is for foot motion. It's almost the same idea, isn't it? So, yeah.
There's a guy.
Great, I'm glad.
Yeah, totally. There's a guy who I like, Philip Beach. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's an osteopath, I guess you could call him. He wrote a book which is all about movement and different ways of thinking about movement. And he calls shoes sensory deprivation chambers.
Yes,
which I like. And it's kind of like the same thing with the chair. It just deprives you of sensory input. So I'm down here on the ground, and this is my monitor. It's attached at a nice height for me. And
does your monitor just rest on another little outcrop from that back zone, does it?
No, it's detached directly to it. So there's different mounting systems that most monitors have, and we've just created a mounting system so that the monitor itself sits directly onto the desk, and you can change it to whatever height you want.
Okay.
But from here, I can literally use a finger, and it will bring it up to standing at a faster rate than I can stand.
Wow.
So by the time you're up, the desk is already up as well.
Wow,
and then
that's
if I bring this down,
that's very slick.
all it takes is a tilt and a drop, and you're back down, and you're on the ground.
Right. And I also noticed on your email, you've actually got a heap of pictures of alternate sitting postures at the base, which I think Katie Bowman's got a poster with 101 different ways to sit on the floor, which opens up that whole possibility for hip motion, fascial stimulation, hydration of different tissues, different neural slides. So do you tend to find yourself going for the same old 3 or 4, or are you intentionally combining the sitting with different options?
No, I think like anyone, you form your favorites, and for me, those are like 90-90. So if I bring you down here, so having one leg, where are you? There, one leg out in front, one leg out the back. I find that this is pretty much my main go-to, because from there you've actually got a lot of options, and also having one hand on the ground, bringing your shoulder girdle and connecting that with your pelvis actually becomes quite important as well, and you can really start to move around and bring your upper body into it. And then from there you can just switch it around into cross-legged sitting quite easily. You can have one leg out in front. You can switch to the other side. From there, you can kind of roll over into kneeling. You start circulating through a number of postures. And the whole point here is the best posture is the next posture. Like you want to create an environment where you've got postural diversity. You can start to move when you feel like you need to move, because our body gives us all of the signals that all of the signals we need. Like we don't need an app for this. Before we know it, we'll feel it. And if we have an environment that allows for that movement, then it'll naturally occur. And if it naturally occurs, we don't have to think about it. And that's the key part in my mind when we're designing products, is trying to create an environment where movement is the default, where healthy behaviors are the default. We don't have to constantly go out of our way to make healthy decisions and be a strong, healthy human every time there's something good to do. That we can just live our life and do the things we enjoy, and our environment is set up in a way which is facilitating these good things in our life.
Yeah, exactly. The environment does dictate how we move a lot. And I really like the sheepskin rug on the floor as well. That's you are New Zealander,
Cozy.
That doesn't surprise me. Good. So what's the state of your back pain these days then? Are you all good?
Yeah, so I've had a mixed bag. I've injured discs, I've strained muscles, I've had a stress fracture, I've had chronic issues post that stress fracture, and right now it's really good. When I was in Holland playing hockey, for instance, I came after my first season there. I came back and I had a stress fracture in my L1, and was told I should give up hockey by my sports doctor. And I thought, well, that's unlikely. So I just had to change my training program.
Is L1 a commonplace for a stress fracture in hockey players? Because it's quite unusual otherwise, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that kind of T12 L1 junction. And it's the rotational stuff. I'm a goalkeeper, or was a goalkeeper, so it wasn't as common, but it was mainly from the strength stuff I was doing in the gym. So I was doing anything from 2 to max 5 RM heavy lifting of deadlifts, squats, lunges in the gym. And I wasn't respecting my recovery times probably as well as I should have been.
Wow.
And was just overloading and overtraining during that time. Plus, I had, when I came back, I had real bad gut issues because I had a gluten and dairy allergy. And if you're in Holland, all they do is drink Heineken and eat cheese, so and eat bread. So my gut was an absolute mess when I came back, and I didn't even realize. So I had a very irritated bowel. I was lifting extremely heavy. I had pretty average movement patterning at those times. So my efficiency of my squats and my deadlifts were actually pretty poor. I'd had chronic back pain prior to that. So my spinal strength and my erector spinae and my hip flexors were all pretty weak. So I was kind of lifting off a pretty poor base, really, and then just cranking it, going for as heavy as I could. So it was a recipe for problems, and I ran into them. And so after that, I still went back, played another season in Holland, played the best season of my life that next season. Didn't lift a single weight that whole year, just went to complete body weight movements and used the internal tension of my body against itself, and improved my ability to move. And so focused on movement quality over movement quantity as such. And
music to my ears, Bart. Music to my ears. I always talk about movement quality, and so few people get that it's, in my mind, a hierarchy of influence is 10 times greater than how much strength you have. And in fact, I see a lot of people with great strength who have zero movement quality, and lots of injuries. So, but trying to actually train it and have people invest in the importance of developing it, it's a hard sales job unless maybe you're an athlete and you get it. But a lot of the general population, it kind of hasn't filtered down to that level yet. But it's equally relevant to the 40-year-old, mum with 3 kids who's struggling with her back. She needs movement quality ahead of strength. I think the strength is great afterwards, but yeah. So it taught you, the fact is you listened to your body and you altered course from what I can see.
Quite dramatically. And I had to kind of shift away from a lot of the fundamental stuff that we've been taught through our physio degrees to do what my body needed. So I, went away from the basic gym trainings, and I was mainly working out of gyms as a physio, working with athletes in gyms and all this kind of stuff, and revert back to these body weight loaded activities that I could only move to the capacity of my own flexibility and my own strength endurance, I guess. So that was a challenge. Also, then shifting my diet completely and shifting away from dairy and gluten. That made a huge difference. Just recognizing that there were some central sensitization aspects that were noticed, like that I was noticing were playing into the pains that I had in my back. Noticing how stress and just load in my life more broadly. So looking at workload stresses and sleep and the lack of sleep, and how that was impacting my gut and then impacting my ability to move. So when I started going to bed earlier at 10 o'clock at night and getting into a better routine and sleeping longer, a lot of my issues resolved quite quickly as well. So there's
what I'm hearing is
period.
you took a very multi-dimensional approach. Some of it was mindset, some of it was nutrition, some of it was movement, some of it was sleep, and I honestly think with anything that's a little bit chronic in our bodies, it's not a quick one thing's going to fix everything. You do have to step back and look at all those lifestyle factors and take that holistic approach. And I think sometimes when people get stuck in the cycle, it's because they're being too narrow in their focus. All of the focus is on the body, and that's what I see in chronic back pain is this, laser light focus that the body is responsible for all the pain. And yes, that's where it's manifesting, but the triggers can be so diverse, and stepping back and looking at the whole picture is usually the pathway out.
Totally. I love Peter O'Sullivan's work around this.
Yeah.
And his
he's in my state. Aren't we lucky?
Is it? Yeah, exactly. You are lucky. And I'm going to claim that he's a Kiwi. So there you go.
Well, I'm going to claim he's a Perth-based physio. So we can have a claim to him.
Yeah, exactly. I think that his contribution around functional behavioural therapy, and looking at all of the kind of attributes that help us determine how we move, and the ways that we can change it. I think that when I read some of his work, it definitely landed home for both my experience, but also the more longer-term, chronic, long-term back patients that I see and treat. It starts to tie it in nicely.
Yeah, he's actually got some great YouTube videos. I might just put them in the show note links for listeners too, because Peter's a physio in Perth who really is challenging, not in a bad way. It's kind of common. I find his approach very common sense, and it's certainly the same as mine. But some physios find it a little bit confronting. Some patients find it a little bit confronting. But he's certainly just shifting the perspective and the paradigm and removing fear of movement and helping people see the language health professionals use has created some of the problems that people have.
And admittedly, he was one of the people that caused most of these problems through his research around the core. And, and him coming out in 2013 and saying, look, I've got it wrong. It really pissed a lot of people off. And I think one of the articles, maybe the show link to, is his the 10 facts everyone should know about back pain.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of. Great.
It's a fantastic article, and it's changed my approach, not just that article, but his understanding. One of the things I needed to do for my back is return extension range of motion. Particularly at my P12L1 level, there seemed to be kind of like an underlying discogenic contributor to that pain. And when I improved my extension, my pain would dissipate. And if I lost extension for any particular reason, I'd wake up with pain in the morning. And returning extension is something that, is such an easy thing to do generally, bend back more often, and has been shown to reduce the likelihood of getting back pain, increase the speed of recovery if you do get back pain, and is one of the most common treatments for back pain.
Yeah.
So it just shows us how imbalanced we've become within our lifestyles, where everything is an affliction. And as well as that, recently over the last couple of years, I've had to retrain myself to bend forward normally, because I've just created all of these weird movement patterns where I was trying to tilt at my pelvis and maintain spinal neutral and all of this bollocks that I've been taught and had thought about, incorrectly for many years. And that they're actually all kind of anxiety-based movements that were being driven by my fear of hurting my own back, and these kind of good lifting techniques that I thought were a thing. But when you really step back and you look at it, you go, actually, I'm moving weirdly. I'm not moving naturally how my spine would naturally move. I'm moving in a way because I'm worried about it. And the spine is so robust and so strong. And when
I think timing comes into that, like when you're in acute phase of an injury, it may be useful to learn how to isolate one section and move other parts, but that's a short period of time. And then when things heal, the system needs to be integrated again. And I actually think Pilates sometimes reinforces that for way too long in people's ideas about neutral. We don't move for all day. We're in and out of neutral, but I can see the value in it for a window of time. And I think that's just where people get a little bit confused about the messaging. And
we have to be careful.
We do. As health practitioners, we really need to be.
We have to be so careful with our language. And when I went back into the clinic after taking some time off and researching a lot more into back pain, coming across Peter O'Sullivan's stuff and a number of other things, just realized, or Paul Butler's work, the Noi group around graded exposure and all of their work with language and framing of language, just realizing all of the language I was using and potentially how harmful that could be if people were taking it the wrong way, and shifting it to when someone comes in to see me for a back pain, ruling out red flags, ruling out anything serious, and then looking at, what is really causing this, teaching them about the inflammatory process and what to expect over the first few days and what the general processes that they'll go through, and framing their early recovery and the amount of movement that they do in a really positive way. So allowing them to just rest when you need to and move when you feel comfortable. Choose these movements that don't aggravate your pain. Maybe do less of the ones that do aggravate it for just a little bit of time. For a short term, we'll get past that. And then as soon as they're over that initial inflammatory process, getting them confident about their back, going, your back is so incredibly strong and robust. It's just had a little minor upset and you're going to get back there no problem. And it's made to move in all directions. It loves it. In fact, we want to get it moving in all directions. But these things take a little bit of time to heal. It's just like if you scab your knuckle, your knuckle and your skin takes a little bit of time to heal. Backs are strong, your back will be fine. You're all good. Keep going.
Love it. And so this leads me to final two questions.
Yeah.
What are your top 3 tips for someone who's stuck in stubborn back pain? Sounds to me like certainly movement, which has been your own experience, but I'll let you answer. question. I won't answer it for you.
You feel free to.
I ask you a question and answer it for you. You go.
Yeah, get it. I think if it's persistent back pain, if it's long-term chronic pain, and you're not convinced that you can see that when you do a certain movement it gets worse or better. I think thinking a little bit more broadly about your pain and what else might influence, and looking at your sleep and looking at your diet, looking at your hydration, looking at the amount of inflammatory foods and drinks, alcohol and fatty foods and sugar that you might be putting into your diet, understanding that level of things to see what impact, if you change anything there, will have on your pain. That would be one thing, thinking broader. Then I think seeing what impact movement in your general work environment would be, because if you're spending time not moving in a particular situation for 8 to 10 hours a day, then that's not really good for anyone. And it's not just our back pains or our backs that kind of bear the brunt of that. It's a lot of our body that bears the brunt of that. And I think the other one is extension. It's not always the answer, but it's often the answer, is bringing people back into extension and really getting full range of motion into extension. So bending backwards more often and further, getting that full range of motion. Because if you've had the most common source of back pain, which is a flexion related injury, which might be at the disc or at the joints, for instance, it's extension, bending backwards, which will solve that. And often we just don't go through the full range, and we never ever regain full range. We get to a point where the back pain mostly goes away, or it does go away for a bit, and then it gets stirred up every 6 months or so. And if we go through a pattern of really getting full range of motion into extension, then we can often solve it for a lot longer.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I certainly see, which listeners will have heard me bang on about this, but the amount of spinal extension we can access is dictated by where our pelvis sits on our feet. And if our pelvis is not centered on our base for support, you can feel a limit in your extension. So I think that's just a little side thing to add on top of what you're saying, is that whenever you're trying to access spinal extension in standing or weight bearing, if your pelvis is too far back in your heels, it's going to compress. If it's too far forward in your toes, there's going to be an impurity in the extension. But if that pelvis is centered with equal pressure in all four parts, front and rear foot, left and right foot in balance, then you've got more ability to access a more pure extension. And that's the bit we don't talk about sometimes with retraining extension. So yeah. I 100% agree with you. I think our like we said, the environment calls us to be more flexion-based. And what you're saying is balance that, yeah. like we're more sagittal plane based, flexion extension. Not much of us are doing our lateral motions or rotations unless we're golfers or hockey players or even swimmers. So yeah, it's about balancing, isn't it? The range of spinal motions that we access.
Yeah, and I think the pelvis thing, I think people will start to realize or feel that when they start doing a bunch of them. So I would say to people, just do lots of them and see what it feels like in your body, and play with the position of your pelvis.
Yes.
And play with, doing it in slightly different ways, bent one way, bending backwards, going back the other way, seeing how it feels through all different directions. Because, but just do some,
Yeah, totally. Do some and let your body guide you as to where your pelvis needs to be for you to get the most out of the movement, because those internal signals are our guide, totally, aren't they? And people have forgotten that. They kind of trust what a physio says rather than what their own body's telling them. So that's a core messaging as well. And finally, when I say bulletproof back, what does that look like to you?
I think to me it is a back that's happy moving and comfortable moving, and it's a person who has no anxiety around their movements in their back. So I think just having confidence to move your back is a bulletproof back. And also recognizing that if it does get sore from something that you've done, it's okay. 90% of these back pains settle down. 1% of these, less than 1% of these back pains are actually serious. It's very, very rare that there's something nasty happening. And if we treat our back a little bit more like we'd treat a knuckle being scabbed or a cut in our hand, we wouldn't have the same level of anxiety around the impacts of it. And if we don't have the same level of anxiety around it, we'll probably move a lot more, we'll probably recover a bit better. So I think a bulletproof back is one that you're confident in when it's moving or even when it's sore, realizing that it is strong, it is incredibly robust, and your body has this amazing natural ability to heal.
Geez, Bart, you sound like me. I'm loving it. And you could have said all the wrong things, but you're just feeding me everything I want to hear. It's magical. So I'm really going to strongly, I think between the two of us, hopefully we've brought a few more people to some positive messaging about stubborn back pain, that there is a way out. You just need the right tools. And certainly one of the big tools is your desk and your getting rid of that chair, having options and getting into your hip flexibility, improving your hip mobility just by getting rid of the chair, and the speed and the range of motion, the things you talked about. So can you just give the listeners your website details? And even on your website, I notice you have a 5 ways to set up your office desk for people in back pain. Is that, did I get it right?
How to set up your home office so you don't get back pain.
Perfect.
It's just 5 simple steps. It's a free downloadable. It's due for an update soon, so I update it every few months with new information, new research that I'm reading, just tinker with the messaging and help people get it right and change it as things develop and as our understanding develops, because none of this stuff is stagnant. So if you feel like your back pain hasn't been understood in the past and no one's been able to help your back pain in the past, then there's no reason to think that might be different in the future, that might be different now. So I'd say maintain hopefulness around your ability to improve and your body's ability to heal and your ability to get into the functional things in the daily life tasks that you want to be getting into. But the website is limber.nz, limber.nz. And if you use the code Bulletproof Back, you'll get 10% off everything.
Yeah, well, that's bonus. Great. I'll be ordering right after this. What? Just on that, what's freight like to Oz? Is freight a big deal to Australia?
It depends what you're getting. So if you're getting the mini, it generally is about $100. And if you're getting the big one, it can vary depending on where you are. So just email us and we'll find out what the freight is to wherever you are.
Yeah, and you do ship globally, do you? Are you worldwide?
Yeah. So we'll ship globally. It just depends on the cost of whether or not people are happy to pay for that shipping.
Yeah, totally.
We just sent one to the middle of the depths of Canada, which was quite fun.
Hey? I mean, seriously, you spend 8 hours of your day, some people more, in their office. Like, structure it well. And then, as you say, movement doesn't become a conscious choice. It's just happening. And your subconscious is just doing it. And, I think the longevity of your body, investing in your workspace is such a small price to pay to keep your body happy, hydrated, functional, strong, joint mobility, joint hydration. They're all big deals. Totally. And, that's awesome.
Totally. And when we move, it sends more blood flow up into our brain. And when we've got more blood flow in our brain, we can make better decisions. We can think more clearly. We can problem solve better. So that's where all the benefits of moving at your desk and sit-stand desk come from. It's just from the increased stimulation of our body and the impact that has on our brain blood flow.
And metabolic rate. I think it's even standing compared to sitting is 8 times the metabolic rate, So, if you're up and then you're down, or just that that transitioning is burning calories. So, not only are you preventing the sitting disease, you're certainly helping improve cardiovascular function as well.
Yeah, and that's the fun stuff. So the Indian Institute of Design and Technology in Delhi are about to launch a whole bunch of research into limber and the desk, and they're looking at the floor postures and the impact of active resting postures. So there's a little bit of research which is known about what happens when we increase base metabolic rate and our muscle activity in these like sitting and kneeling postures because our muscles are having to work just a little bit. And they're about to go into that in a lot more depth and really start to try and understand the impacts on our work and on our bodies over a long term. So that's an exciting development which is kicking off too.
Oh, that's magical, mate. I so love what you're doing. It's just knockout stuff, and I'm so glad we've made the time to connect and chat. And but thanks for your time. And listeners, just know I'm going to reference all those things we talked about in the show notes, including Peter Sullivan's stuff video, which is so worthwhile checking out. And go to Bart's website and get your work sort of designed, set up so that it's working for you, against you. And Bart, thank you so much for your time. I love your philosophy. I love that you experienced the pain, you've come through it, and that you have such a global, holistic approach to it all. It's really refreshing to hear in a physio because, as you would admit, some of our colleagues are a little bit behind the times, and part of the idea of this podcast is to bring this fresh messaging to the people who most need to hear it. And
I think in the last 7 years, back pain particularly has been through like a scientific renaissance in the way that it's viewed and understood. And so there are a lot of misheld beliefs, and there are a lot of old methodologies and mindsets that still are prevalent within the way that back pain is treated. So I think if people aren't getting results and they aren't feeling improvement, then they should search someone out who can help them, because there'll be someone there who can help.
Yep, I agree. All right, Bart, thanks so much for your time. I'll let you get on with whatever you've got going on next.
You're welcome. See you later.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you could take a second to like the show, share the show with someone you know struggling with back pain, drop us a few comments. It really helps us spread the message globally. And don't forget, for those of you ready to build your own Bulletproof Back, check out my 6-week online course, which is a comprehensive blend of mindset, movement, and emotional strategies designed to help you find some pain relief and then the confidence to get moving freely again. Or for those of you who feel like you might need a bit more customized support, check out my consultation schedule in the show notes. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks again.